I created like a quick slide deck just to kind of go over a little bit of Home Assistant, for the people that are not familiar with Home Assistant, or how it works, or how it is being built. Then I go into some energy management stuff, why we build it, what we're building. I'll give like, also kind of the direction we're going. And then, in the end, I have like some slides just to see how like Home Assistant energy co-ops can like, collaborate in a way. I'm very happy to be here. I think that we launched energy management 2 months ago, and it's been a big drive for our community. They love what's happening, and we see a lot of people adopt energy management. So I'm happy to be here and like share what we're up to. All right. The topic of my presentation is home energy management with Home Assistant and ESPHome. So we've mentioned Home Assistant a couple of times. There's actually a second project called ESPHome that we also use for our home energy management. So first, what is Home Assistant? Home Assistant is open source home automation that focuses on local control and privacy. What this means is that it is a piece of software that you can run at home, for example, on a Raspberry Pi, or we also sell dedicated hardware right now, Home Assistant Blue. And it pulls in all the information, all your devices at home. So, Home Assistant is hardware agnostic, so it's not limited to just some hardware that we create. We will pull in your thermostats, your Honeywell thermostats, your Sonos media players, your Hue light bulbs, your IKEA plugs. Everything gets pulled into Home Assistant. And from there on, you can, you own that data. All the data stays local. There's no cloud part attached to it. And from there on, you can have dashboards for control, as you can see on the screenshot. It's possible to have automations be created, like, hey, let's turn on the lights when the sun is setting. We have mobile apps, so you can include presence detection and notifications for the people in your household. So, for example, you can be like, hey, you left the garage door open. Do you want to close it? People get this on their phone. They could close their garage door. Presence detection can be used to turn off the lights when everybody leaves the house, or send a notification when you're at work too late. And Home Assistant is really big. So we're turning 8 years old next week, actually. And last year we had over 8,000 people contributing to it. And that made us the second most active Python project on all of GitHub. The year before, we were the 10th most active project, not Python, but all projects on GitHub. So I think this year will also be really high, because it's been a really busy year with a lot of people staying at home and realizing they need to improve their homes. And Home Assistant is a good choice for this. So like I said, Home Assistant is open source. People can install it for free. And it's an application, not just Python application, but there's a whole system based around it, like an operating system, so you can easily update it through the UI. We've put a lot of effort in the last few years so that you don't need to be a system administrator to use Home Assistant, but the less technical people can also start using Home Assistant and keeping it up to date. The second project that I want to talk about is ESPHome. ESPHome is an open source home automation device firmware tool. And what this means is that you have these microcontrollers. These are also on the slide. It's a ESP32 or ESP8266. These are $3 mini computers, but they have Wi-Fi, and you can like connect any sensor that is out there to it, and then you can get this data into Home Assistant. And normally you would have to program, you have to know C, but with ESPHome, it's as simple as saying like, hey, I have attached a sensor to this one pin on the microcontroller. This is my Wi-Fi credentials. ESPHome will then program your microcontroller with that information, and boom, it will pop up in Home Assistant right away. So that way you can easily pull in information, temperature, humidity, but also CT clamps, and anything that has data, you can pull into Home Assistant. And the way we see it as like, your home and like the open source ecosystem that runs it, Home Assistant is the brains, and ESPHome are the eyes, the ears, but also the hands, because like, ESPHome can also send, for example, infrared commands or turn on a relay or these kind of things. And ESPHome is, of course, also fully local, fully open source, freely available. And the last thing is that also ESPHome integrates super well with Home Assistant in that every data, as soon as it changes on the ESPHome side, it instantly notifies Home Assistant. So it's super fast. So the last thing I want to introduce is Nabu Casa. So Nabu Casa is the company that I started to maintain Home Assistant and ESPHome. Nabu Casa has no investors. We're currently 12 full-time employees that are working all the time on improving Home Assistant, improving ESPHome. And the way it's funded is that our users can choose to subscribe to Nabu Casa. So this is not mandatory. This is like, if you like what we do, if you want to make sure that Home Assistant improves, if you want to make sure ESPHome improves, you can subscribe to Nabu Casa. And then also as a perk for subscribing, you also get Home Assistant Cloud, which is, because Home Assistant is all local, it means that when you're away from home, you can actually not reach to Home Assistant. So to do that, you have to open ports to your router, SSL certificates, all that stuff. And that's that's okay for the system administrator user types. But once you get to less technical users, they're not very familiar with that or comfortable. And so we offer an end-to-end encrypted remote connection into your Home Assistant instance, which also allows us to integrate voice assistants with your Home Assistant. And we offer access to a text-to-speech API so that you can create customized notifications. So energy management. The reason we started energy management with Home Assistant is that, we felt like we work a lot on local control and privacy, but it's no longer the big pressing issue of our times. The climate crisis is a lot more important, and we wanted to help with it and support our users in dealing with this. And so what we realized when we were looking at it is that actually Home Assistant is already used for energy management. And the reason it was already being used is because the foundation of home automation and the foundation of energy management is that you need to read out devices, you need to be able to control devices. And so users were already using Home Assistant for energy management, but everybody had to build up the same things. So we give you the building blocks to build dashboards, but then everybody had to create their own energy dashboard. And that sucked. We can do that better. Also, Home Assistant by default used to only store 10 days of data unless you start configuring your databases. So that's also not good for energy management because we need insight into last month, last quarter, last year, etc. And so what we did is that we added energy management in a way that it will, instead of giving you building blocks that you have to build out your own energy management dashboard, we decided, no, we're going to build a full-on energy management feature. And the only thing you have to do is to configure the input. So only configure what is your solar production, what is your grid usage, what is your grid return to grid. And then we pull all the data together and build out a beautiful experience for you. So how does it look? Let's see, I'm actually gonna load up, I hope it all works. I'm gonna load up the energy dashboard of my parents. As you can see, it's a little shifted in time because my parents live in the Netherlands, but I am in California. So it is showing the dashboard in California time, but we can still give a good indicator kind of how it looks. So the energy dashboard in Home Assistant, the top right, you can see the period we're looking. And so I think the first thing to say is Home Assistant really, we only focus right now on energy, not on power. So we only focus on watt hour. And the reason for that is that Home Assistant is used worldwide. Our knowledge of how energy is being managed worldwide is not complete. So we're just taking a first step with just looking at consumption and production, see how this applies worldwide. We're already getting a lot of feedback on things we need to fix and improve. We don't look at watt yet, but that's something that might come later. So when you open the dashboard, you by default are focused on today, but you can pick week and month and year. And what you can see is that it will track, it has different colors, and each color represents a different source. So blue is the type of energy that is from the grid. If you have purple, it means that you were having, so you were producing more solar power than that you were consuming yourself. And so that has been given back to giving back to the grid. Actually, my parents don't have a CT clamp yet on their inverter, so we don't know their production. I'm going to switch to a different dashboard in a second to show all the different possibilities. You know, we also nowadays, we track gas. We do that because, you know, a lot of the source for energy, a lot of energy is going towards heating and cooling the home. And so we felt that gas was an important part there. Right now, we only support gas in like cubic meters, but we're also going to look into kilowatt hours because we realize that not everybody in the world uses cubic meters to measure the gas. Now I'm going to quickly switch to the Home Assistant demo. So this is a demo environment. And this demo environment will show you, this is just a normal dashboard, but I'm going to go to the energy dashboard. And so this demo environment is really nice because I have enabled battery as well. So we have support for grid, solar, battery. And if we look at energy distribution, and I'm actually going to zoom in a bunch and see if that's going to be more visible, is if you look at energy distribution, you can see where energy is coming from and where energy is going in your home. And then the home circle around the home will actually indicate what kind of sources your home was using today. So orange is for solar, turquoise is for battery, blue is for grid, and green is for non-fossil fuels from the grid. So solar panels with inverters, battery is usually with CT clamps on your batteries. Gas is measured different ways. In a P1 port with DSMR is what's being currently the most popular. Grid, we generally include the electricity meters work really well, CT clamps work really well. This green source of like non-fossil fuels consumed via the grid, the way we integrate that is that we, you know, our angle on building energy management is to help people get insight into how sustainable their homes are and to see if their homes are, you know, if they can improve the energy management in their home. And so part of that is wanting to make people aware that the electricity they were getting from the grid, if this was like causing emissions, yes or no. And so we integrate with this product called, this website called electricitymap.org. This is a website from a startup in Denmark called Tomorrow. And what they do is that they gather for every electricity grid in the world, what kind of energy is currently being shared on that grid. What is the source? Is it solar? Is it nuclear? Is it coal? Is it gas? Is it wind, etc.? And they keep track of history. And so looking at, you know, with that information, we can calculate for you how green your current setup is. So I'll quickly show let me see. I'll quickly show energy electricitymap.org because we link directly to it from the energy dashboard, and it allows our users to gain good insight into the electricity they're getting. So yeah, this is, you can see, for example, for the Netherlands on the electricity map, it will also show you like if it's like importing or exporting electricity. That way that like, if you produce only green energy, but you're importing a lot of fossil fuel energy, then of course you're still going to be like attributed to you. And then you can see over the history that like, you know, the Netherlands is not doing too well. Right. Back to the dashboard. As you might notice, the data is different right now. This is the Home Assistant demo. So the Home Assistant demo will generate fake data just so that people can get like experience our dashboard. All right, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So there's a few things I want to show here. First, solar production. So we keep track of your solar production as an individual graph because it's sometimes difficult to see how much of your solar you're using and returning back to the grid. So we want to show like that as an independent graph. The dotted line is a forecast of how much you're going to produce today. Right now, we have one integration providing solar forecast, which is called forecast.solar. It's the website. It's called forecast.solar. But it is possible to have other integrations provide solar forecasting. We don't There are none yet, others, but they will come soon, I bet. And this way you can see, hey, how much am I going to produce? And in the future, we also want to make sure that we can start offering automation, saying like, hey, if I'm going to produce so much energy, maybe we want to turn on charging the car right now, and things like this. On the right, we have little 3 gouges. So the first one is net consumed from the grid. And what this means is that based on the period that we have selected, day, week, month, or year, it will show you how much did you use more from the grid or did you return more to the grid. And what this indicates is that if you on a day basis or week basis, do not rely on the grid, then maybe you could install home batteries or use your electric car as a home battery to not rely at the grid at all times. The second gouge is self-consumed solar energy. So this is something that this is about for people to see like, hey, from all the energy I'm producing, how much am I consuming yourself? Because it is generally not very economical to return it back to the grid. They give you poor pricing. So it's always better to use it yourself. And then the last gouge is non-fossil energy consumed. So this is, again, using electricity map, but it's also taking your solar panels into consideration. So that way we know that, okay, this is the amount of good energy you've used. And then, of course, in this case, it will be 25% is the not so good energy. Then if we scroll down, gas consumption, I mean, this speaks for itself, like how much gas have you been using? This can either be for heating water, this can be used for your heating. There's a bunch of reasons why people use gas. And this is just a good indicator to keep track of your usage. Then besides tracking your energy, you can also specify how much you're paying for your energy. So that way we can give you a quick overview of like the cost that you're going to be expecting. We do not support all the billing features because we were doing exploratory research into like billing, and it is crazy out there. Like there's countries where like you charge differently if you go over a certain amount of usage, like the first 10 kilowatt hours is this tariff. Then like in Portugal, every 15 minutes the tariff changes, and there's so many different features and options, and that like we're not going to be able to solve this for everything. So right now we haven't implemented that. And then besides monitoring your whole home, we're also allowing you to monitor individual devices. Right now we just put this at the bottom, but we might integrate it differently later. And this kind of shows you like, hey, what is the devices in my house that are using the most electricity? So, this is actually very useful to kind of drill down and being like, oh, this device uses a lot. And to get this data into Home Assistant, a lot of people use just either a CT clamp on the electricity plug, or they put electrical plugs in between that like can also measure the current flowing through it. Then for the energy dashboard, let me just quickly show you the configuration. So like I said, we wanted to make it super easy. Anyone should be able to get this energy dashboard in their home. And so from the Home Assistant side, we created this energy configuration where we already break it out in grid, solar panels, home battery, and gas consumption, and individual devices. And I'm clicking away. I can actually zoom in a little. And so when you are changing your grid, you can actually see, so you can have a drop down, you can see all the different energy sources that are suitable for this, for picking for grid, and you can track the cost. So we have different ways. Either people can have dynamic pricing using like an entity, which is a data point in Home Assistant that keeps track of the total cost. You can have a data point that tracks the current price, and then we will keep track of the total cost, the current price per kilowatt hour. Or you can select a static price, and that way it will keep track of, like, we will also keep track of how much it's costing. So, if you're using like a P1 port, you actually get your energy consumption in the Netherlands and Belgium, at least, broken out already by tariffs. So then it's easily to attach like a fixed cost to it. Solar production, it's, again, you can click how much you know, find the data point that represents your production of your solar panels, and then you can also include your forecast. So that can be done from right here. So we really make it super easy to configure everything and tie it all back together into the dashboard. Okay, let me switch back to the slides. Presenter view. Okay, this one we have, this is where we were. Yeah, so that was the energy dashboard in like a nutshell. If you want to check out the energy dashboard and play with it yourself, we actually have a demo. It's available on demo.homeassistant.io. That's actually the code I was just showing you. That like that website that was actually the demo. And if you go to homeassistant.io, you can also click View Demo to go there. It will work on your mobile phone, tablet, desktop. It's the exact same experience as you would get if you were using Home Assistant yourself. Yeah, so the other thing that we introduced is that, you know, when we were working on energy management, we realized it's too difficult for users to get their electricity information inside Home Assistant. There are a whole range of solutions out there. Some are not local. They have like a cloud attached to it. Some are open source, but they all work through like MQTT. And so then users need to set up MQTT. They need to configure this device. And it was all too challenging. So we work with our community and we developed this product together with Marcel Zuidwijk, which we call SlimmeLezer. It's a Dutch word. It means smart reader because it's connected to a smart meter. So it works with any smart meter that has a P1 port. And you know, these P1 ports are common. We currently support Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Sweden. And so it's running ESPHome. And that means that, you know, you plug it into your electricity meter. If you use an electricity meter with a DSMR5, it will actually be able to power the device directly. You don't need to plug in a USB charger. You configure it to Wi-Fi. And because it's based on ESPHome, it will instantly plug in, show up in Home Assistant, and you get all your electricity data, total consumption, total return to grid, all that information, gas usage is available in Home Assistant and ready to be used in the energy management feature. And so this is something Marcel is actually selling pre-made. So people can order this and then they can, you know, people just get a ready-made device. It just basically can plug in at home and it just works. For this is all the code on ESPHome. All that stuff is open source, so you can also build your own. The other one that you can build yourself is what we call Home Assistant Glow. So Home Assistant Glow is an open source pulse meter. So a pulse meter, a lot of electricity meters have this LED that's on it that will blink whenever a certain chunk of energy is being used. A lot of times it will like blink 1,000 times for 1 kilowatt hour total being used. So what this pulse meter does is that it's actually a light sensor you put on top of this LED on your electricity meter. That's the box on the right with the lightning bolt on it. It will keep track whenever the LED pulses. It will then calculate what your current energy usage is based on like how fast you're consuming. And it will make, because it's based on ESPHome, you connect it to Wi-Fi, boom, all that data is instantly available in Home Assistant to use with energy management. This one we do not, there's nobody selling this pre-made, but everything is also on GitHub, you know, including the step files to generate the printer case. Yeah, energy management so far in Home Assistant. So we released this in August. We do monthly releases, so every first Wednesday of the month. So in August, we did our initial release. It was relatively basic. We allow you to track your grid, your solar, both usage and cost. We only supported the day view, and we have already upgraded many of the integrations in Home Assistant to be compatible with energy management. Like I mentioned before, we have like, I think, 1,800 different devices and services integrated into Home Assistant, different APIs. Around 40 or 50 of those are energy management related. And so we were working through to make sure that a lot of those already work out of the box with the new energy management feature. Then we just did a release last week. We added gas and battery to it. We added the option to do week, month, and year views. We did improve configuration validation, so people had been having some issues with configuring the energy dashboard, which our goal is to make it as easy as possible. So we actually added extra validation there. We added more support integrations. And then we also realized that some developers were struggling with making energy management, so adding support for energy management to their integrations. So we've also made it easier to support. Roadmap, what's coming. So next week is our birthday. So we're turning 8 years old. We're going to have a surprise announcement. I don't want to give too much away, but it's going to be really cool. So check our socials to stay up to date of what's coming. The 2021.10, the October release, we're going to have better support for CT clamps. The challenge we're having with CT clamps is that some APIs that represent CT clamps will split up into like import and export when you put this on your electricity meter, but some APIs don't. They just create a total net consumption measurement for us. And we need to split that inside Home Assistant into like import and export. Now, we didn't do that initially because it's not very accurate, but since certain APIs don't follow, like they don't offer it, so we're going to add better support for this. It will at least allow us to give like an estimate of your consumption and production. And then we're also going to offer like data cleanup tools. So this is all stored in like long-term statistics in Home Assistant, and sometimes there are integrations that have bugs. They're reporting the incorrect information, maybe temporarily. There's glitches. They should have been filtered out, but they're not filtered out yet in the older releases. So people have bad data. Bad data will cause the energy management dashboard to look all like messed up. So we're going to offer some cleanup tools there. Then ideas that we have, but we don't have like plans yet to fully integrate it is, we want to make it easy to charge your home battery or your electric vehicle when either the price is cheap or when you're returning energy back to the grid. We're probably going to do this with automations where we need some predictive, we need to like machine learn on the old information to see what we expect usage going to be in the next hour or two, etc. So we're going to make this possible, but we don't really have a good plan yet there. The other thing that we're looking into is importing historical data. So I was talking to an energy provider in Australia, and they are already offering a custom component for the users to offer Home Assistant integration of their data. However, as an energy provider, the best thing they can do is to get 2-hour-old data. But in some cases, it could be as old as 2 days ago. And Home Assistant doesn't work with that. Home Assistant needs to know what's happening now. We don't allow importing historical data yet. So we're exploring that so we can better support energy providers' data directly. And the last thing we're also looking into is do we want to do something with power? So as I said before, we only do energy, we only do watt hours, we don't use watt. And that's because we focus on insight, and insight goes over longer periods of time. I think power is great as an educational tool to show people in the household what's the impact of turning on this device or turning off that device. So it's definitely something we think that is important because we think it's good for people to learn about energy usage and the way it impacts our lives. So we want to do something with it, but we don't have anything planned right now. Yeah, lastly, Home Assistant and energy co-ops. I mean, this is an energy co-op meetup, so I really wanted to touch on this. I know that a bunch of energy co-ops are already using Home Assistant, and so I just wanted to give kind of my insight on it and how I think we should, or how we could collaborate. So I think the first thing is whenever we want something, we should build ourselves. I think we should definitely not wait until standards are being created and standards are being mandated, and then because until a standard is created, these are designed by committees, it takes years, and we don't just want to sit still and do nothing. So whatever we want, whatever we can think of, we should just build it, occasionally fail, iterate, improve, but building is really the way to get to better energy management right now. I think that the other thing is that Home Assistant is not ever going to be the perfect solution for an energy corporation. And this is because we focus on the household and not the household as part of a community. We need to put our focus boundaries somewhere of what we're building, right? However, Home Assistant is a very solid foundation because knowing what's happening in the house is part of being part of an energy, is important for being part of an energy corporation. So Home Assistant, there's no vendor lock-in or anything, so it's easy to extend at every level. Like you could build your own, and the Home Assistant has a lot of stuff already built in. So we have authentication. It's an easy place for users to manage devices, collect data, get insight into energy. And so I think for energy co-ops that want to use Home Assistant, the best approach I would suggest is to create a energy co-op integration. So that way you can actually you can create your own custom panel. It will mean that you have your own website hosted inside Home Assistant, but protected by Home Assistant authentication. So you have access to all the devices, all the data. You have authentication right there. You can update it remotely. Because I've seen some people using Home Assistant and then have MQTT as their central message bus and integrating devices on top of the MQTT. And I think it's easier to add that integration to Home Assistant and then have the Home Assistant data, which you can also always connect to and get all the data out, be used as the foundation. And then I think, we, as energy co-ops are using Home Assistant as part of their projects, I think we can collaborate. As Home Assistant, we're always looking into integrating more energy data. So we pull in more meters, pull in more inverters, make more open source projects, or integrate better with Home Assistant, get the right data in there. And we can also collaborate on integrating new energy standards. I think there's like earlier there was some mention of like demand and response, and so we don't have any demand and response inside Home Assistant. So it would be cool to have knowledge about that and be able to maybe have devices be used, controlled based on the demand or be going up or down. That was my talk. If you want to follow me, I'm Beloop on Twitter. My name is Paulus for Home Assistant, homeassistant.io, ESPHome, ESPHome.io. Yeah, thank you.